Well, folks, the day has come, the day is here, and the fallout of it all is beginning. The tariffs have officially hit. Overall today has been politicians speaking on the issue, news stations speaking ad nauseum about it all, and Canadians being left wondering what is going to happen next. Obviously, different sectors are going to be impacted in different ways, whether it be the finance sector, the housing industry, manufacturing, you name it. There's a lot of different things that are going to be impacted, farming. So we will see what takes place, how long this will last, what will happen. But again, the issue that we currently have, and the issue that a lot of us who watch the show have, is again the lack of diplomacy we've seen from our leaders. They've so badly wanted to look tough and in the face of a bully, quote unquote. They've so badly want to look like they aren't going to back down. And yet there's really only one leader through it all who decided to take a diplomatic approach. And funny enough, the only tariff that was placed on them was 10%. You know, as we covered this morning, you have Doug Ford threatening to cut off the electricity to the United States, which we actually don't know if he can actually do that because it has to go through a regulatory board to be able to do it. And we're going to address three different people and three different reactions. Justin Trudeau gives his address to the people. Pierre Poilievre gave his address to the people. And Mark Carney gave his address to the people. Three different people, three different reactions, three different approaches to dealing with the issue. So let's start off with the lame duck prime minister that's currently in place, Justin Trudeau. He goes in hot and really doesn't help us at all and brings in Putin within the first 30 seconds of his address.
So today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada. Their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense.
So that's how he starts that off today. He's coming after his friends and trying to align with Russia, a lying dictator in Putin. And right there, it shows me that he doesn't understand the art of diplomacy, doesn't understand the art of negotiations. There are several dictators around the world, and especially one that holds as many nuclear weapons as they do, who much of Europe has foolishly relied upon way too much for their energy, one of which Canada has rejected Europe in providing their energy, or someone like that holds a lot of cards that can really impact how we live here in the West, and you're trying to get a peace deal done, it's usually not a good idea to get out in the media and trash that person, regardless of how horrendous of a human being they are. That's a lesson clearly the Liberals have not learned. Also, I will extend my criticisms to the Conservative Party as well, and their criticisms of Trump. Clearly, they have not learned these lessons, and we definitely know Jugmeat has not learned that either. When the person you're going against holds cards, it's usually not a good idea to get out in the media and trash them. But that's all this Liberal Party has done. The Conservative Party has also done the same at various points, not to the same degree, but to various points, which has not made these things any easier. In Canada, and this Liberal Party still have not addressed the elephant in the room. They acknowledge that fentanyl is an issue, but they keep downplaying it. When Trudeau starts off here saying he supports trying to work positively with Russia, but wants to come at us, as much as it is a difficult situation we're dealing with here as the tariffs, the Russia-Ukraine situation's a little more sensitive, a little more delicate, requires a little more diplomacy. So yeah, you want it to make sense. There's your sense right there, Mr. Justin Trudeau. It's honestly advice you probably should take, but you haven't because you wanted to leverage this and use this to gain and maintain political power for your party and for your successor that's coming after you. So I wouldn't mistake Trump's being nice with Russia as him liking Russia or wanting to align with Russia. It's really trying to find a peace deal, which I understand is really hard to delineate and differentiate for a lot of Liberal Party who likes to think through things on black and white terms, that everything is conflated, everything is binary. There's just a lack of nuance. So it was frustrating for me to hear him start off like this. And to my next point, it took a lot of strong arming to acknowledge there was an issue with fentanyl. But he finally acknowledges it, but they continue to play it down. We see here the way Trudeau addresses it later on in the speech.
And just yesterday, we launched a new joint operations partnership supported by a $200 million investment between Canada's security and law enforcement agencies, a partnership that will enhance the coordination of information and intelligence in order to thwart criminal gangs involved in the illegal fentanyl trade. And critically, our actions are working. As the U.S. Customs and Border Protection just acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January, even with all the further enforcements and actions we've taken at the borders. In sum, we stepped up. We engaged closely and constructively with the President and his administration. We did everything we promised. We stuck to our word. And we did it because we believe in working together to protect our citizens.
And he goes on in that address about the same statistic of, only 1% of fentanyl comes from Canada and this, that, the other. And for him to say here that 97% of seizures has dropped was an interesting and peculiar stat to me. Only because he just said that the Customs Border Protection stated that that was the case. And I want to put out a challenge to all of our listeners. I wasn't able to locate it. I may have missed it, but I want to see if you can find where CBP mentions that stat. Because I go to the White House briefing, I only see one stat for 97%, and it's this one. The cartels manufacture fentanyl in clandestine labs they oversee in Mexico in both powder form and pressed into fake pills and traffic it into the United States through the many entry points they control. 97% of seizures occur at the U.S.-Mexico border. That's the closest I could find to him relaying that stat. I go to NBC, and they were quoting Justin Trudeau and covering his presser today. And they say he noted that even though less than 1% of fentanyl seized by the U.S. is coming across the Canadian border, the country has been taking action to further crack down on the illegal drug trade. As a result, Trudeau said there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January. And this is the part that I kind of caught my eye, because I've been, again, having a hard time seeing where CBP stated this specific statistic, is that NBC News themselves said Trudeau said there was a 97% drop. And that's an American outlet saying this about Trudeau's statement, that he stated it. I'm not seeing any links, any stats, or any references to CBP making those statements. Just want to know where they are at. I even went to the Canadian government's briefing news release, and I see they make the same statement here. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection has reported a significant decrease in fentanyl seizures from Canada with a 97% drop in January 2025 compared to December 2024. Again, I understand that this website and news releases typically only like to link within their own webpage, but I think for a statement like that, it would be important and incumbent upon the government of Canada to link to a report or link to a statement that came from CBP, just so that we can increase the amount of transparency with this government, because Canada is lacking trust in our institutions. This would help do that. And I'm trying to be fair. I don't want to say it doesn't exist, because as I said, I very much could have missed it. I'm just not seeing it, haven't found it, been looking, nothing. Is the stat true? Or is Trudeau trying to say things that sound nice but aren't factually correct? And I'm not saying the White House briefing is the tell-all. I'm not saying it's the source of truth. Like, I'm not saying the government of Canada's briefing is a source of truth. I'm just trying to find what materials we have out there and see if we can find a common link between them and see if there is an element of truth to that statement. Again, through a very delicate time, I just want to be fair. And in the spirit of being fair, Trudeau took issue with Trump saying American banks have no access to the Canadian market. This is Trudeau's response to that.
I think in terms of what he wants, I heard he talked about banking again this morning in a tweet, which doesn't make any sense, because American banks, there's about 16 American banks currently active in Canada, holding about $113 billion worth of assets in this country. So the American banks are alive and well and prospering in Canada. It's an example of not really being able to see what it is that he wants, because even the excuse that he's giving for these tariffs today of fentanyl is completely bogus, completely unjustified.
And quite frankly, to a degree, Justin Trudeau isn't wrong, and Donald Trump isn't necessarily 100% wrong either. We see here that from a CBC article from early February says Trump falsely says U.S. banks aren't allowed to do business in Canada. What does he mean? And the reality is several U.S. financial institutions have operations in Canada. They fall under the Schedule II category, foreign-owned banks with Canadian subsidiaries. And they include JP Morgan Chase, which has about 600 employees on this side of the border, and Citibank, which has operated in Canada for more than a century. So what might the U.S. president be referring to? It's somewhat exaggerated. U.S. banks can operate in Canada, but if they really want to be a major player, it's a little more difficult, said Lawrence Krzyzanowski, a professor of finance at Concordia University's John Molson School of Business. And that's actually kind of the issue, is the fact there's so many regulations for foreign-owned banks, specifically, in this case, Trump's interest, the American banks, that he just wants things to open up a little bit more. But the problem with Donald Trump, and the problem I'm having with this whole scenario in the first place, is I don't know if this is 4D chess. I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what is absolutely going on. I just know there's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of politicking going on. What Trump said wasn't necessarily wrong, but it wasn't 100% true about the banking situation in Canada. And the problem I have with statements like this is it gives guys like Justin Trudeau, who has completely screwed over Canada, he gives them a leg to stand on. So if it looks like Trump's slightly off like he is with the banks here, people will tend to believe lies that are coming out of Justin Trudeau, like the 1% fentanyl situation, the supposed, we don't know, the 97 drop in seizures. We don't know how true that is. But people will believe it because, like, oh, Donald Trump's just a liar. That's how it gets played. That's how it gets dressed up. And that's really my frustration with a lot of this right now. Been a lot of politicking, a lot of ambiguity on all sides of it. And I wish people just come to the table and tell it how it is. And I know it takes every party to be able to do that right now. But we're just in a very, very tight and vulnerable situation. But we moved to Pierre Poilievre. And the start of his speech was honestly not very much different from Justin Trudeau's. Lots of dollar for dollar tariff jargon. Lots of Canada's going to stand up for itself jargon. Not a whole lot different. But the one things that were different, on top of him wanting to put dollar for dollar tariffs on American goods, he wants to use that revenue to be able to subsidize and cut taxes here in Canada. Makes sense. I can understand the thought process on it. Not totally bought into it, but I understand where they're going with it. But the one thing I did like was his approach to the fentanyl issue. And that was what it was a very big differentiator for me between Poilievre and Trudeau's statements. Listen to Poilievre here.
The question was, have the Liberals done enough on fentanyl, and is that a good justification for Trump's tariffs? And the answer to both questions is no and no. No, the Liberals have not done enough on fentanyl, but not because they should have been doing it for Trump. They should have been doing it for Canadians. We've lost 50,000 people to fentanyl. That's more than died in the Second World War. And that is because of the weak borders, the soft laws, and the radical liberalization of drugs that the Liberals experimented with and that they want to continue on with. I would ban the drugs, add 2,000 CBSA border guards, more surveillance towers, scanners, and drones to interrupt the illegal entry of fentanyl into our country. And I would treat fentanyl dealers for what they are. They are mass murderers, and they will get life sentences when I'm Prime Minister. But let's be clear, that is not a justification for tariffs. We have guns, drugs, and illegal migrants coming from the United States to Canada. We have never tariffed the Americans for that. If the president wants to fight fentanyl, I agree with him, but I would do it not for President Trump. I would do it for Canadians so that not one more mother gets the knock on the door from a police officer telling her that her son has died in a back alley.
Again, the statement I can definitely get on board with. Have Liberals done enough? No. They've been spouting a lot of statistics, a lot of ideas of what they've done or what they're trying to do, naming a fentanyl czar, which we don't really know how much really impact he's been having. Is he just a figurehead at this point? He definitely wasn't a name that anyone in the circles who would know about this or who are subject matter experts would suggest. But here we are. They can say on paper, we've done this. They can say on paper, we've invested this. They can say on paper, X, Y, and Z, but they really haven't done enough. They've have some photo ops, put some money here and there, but a lot of it is just paper. And so I can appreciate Poilievre's approach to this and being a lot more stricter on our borders. Because the one thing that Trudeau conveniently left out of his address, we still haven't put federal police at our ports, which is a big issue when it comes to fentanyl drug trade. That would have been a big statement. But again, he brought things together with bubblegum and tape because Parliament's prorogued and nothing's really been completed. Again, great for the cameras, but not so great for trying to prove that we're trying to take this seriously. I know I've said it at the top, but there was 3 reactions to this. There's Justin Trudeau's, Pierre Poilievre's, and Mark Carney's. But at least as we stand currently, you probably think, wait, I didn't see Mark Carney's address today. Don't worry, you won't have seen it. But what you have seen is Mark Carney walking back the semiconductor comments. And sorry, not Mark Carney. No, not Mark Carney. It's his campaign that walked it back. During a campaign stop at a bar in Barrie late last week, Carney was caught on camera making remarks about the Canada-US trade war and how much Americans rely on Canadian-made products and raw materials. We're the biggest supplier of electricity, biggest supplier of fertilizer, biggest supplier of aluminum, and biggest supplier of semiconductors. We supply almost all their semiconductors, Carney told the crowd in front of a long row of beer taps. In a statement sent to the Toronto Sun by a campaign spokesperson, the Carney team claims he only meant to emphasize Canada's role in the North American semiconductor supply chain. His remarks underscored the need for Canada to leverage its strengths, its critical minerals, advanced manufacturing, and R&D to further bolster North American semiconductor security and competitiveness, the statement reads. Carney's quest to replace outgoing PM Justin Trudeau has been fraught with dubious claims and outright falsehoods. So again, Carney's gone missing. We need to put an APB out for that, brother. We don't know where he's at. Where's he going? We don't know. But Carney's campaign walked back the semiconductor comment. And also, CTV reports that Carney hits back at Harper over his letter that surfaced yesterday about the fact that Carney didn't have as much of a role as he claims to have had in the 2008 crisis. Liberal leadership frontrunner Mark Carney is hitting back at former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper for accusing the Liberal leadership frontrunner of taking undue economic credit. Responding to a letter Harper penned to Conservative Party members and sent out as a fundraising blast, Carney's campaign accused Harper of being called on to save Pierre Poilievre from a historic drop in support. But no amount of revisionist history can take away from Mr. Carney's proven record of economic leadership, his campaign said in a statement. Carney's team has also doubled down on the assertion that Harper approached him to serve as finance minister and noting that the former prime minister could have picked Poilievre but didn't. The statement also included a handful of references to comments made by prominent Conservatives, including Harper, of the job Carney did as Canada's central banker. Canadians know that Pierre Poilievre and his team bring no experience or plan to protect our economy and no ability to stand up to Donald Trump in a national crisis. Mr. Carney is ready to lead Canada and to build the strongest economy in the G7, Carney's campaign said. Look again at how the start of this article and the headline of the article is written. Carney hits back at Harper. But when you actually get down to the crux of it, Carney didn't say jack. Carney's team is who hit back at Harper. We haven't heard any direct quotes from Carney himself. And this is all starting to become very reminiscent of a Joe Biden presidency campaign in 2020. Mark Carney is hiding. We don't know where he is at. We don't know where he's going. And today of all days, where tariffs are hitting hard, we're not going to see his face. Because you remember, as I've been saying, he is the accident waiting to happen. The Liberals know it now because there's been so many flops and gaffes from this man that now his campaign is the ones who speak out for him and not him himself. That's why we're not going to see a whole lot of him between now and March 9th or March 10th. And we'll see how much we actually see of him when an election is called. It'll be interesting. But that's the news. And one thing to keep an eye out for tonight is this is going down. Donald Trump's State of the Union address on the day of these tariffs will be very interesting. We'll be keeping a close eye on this to see what he says, what comes of it, and what he is claiming is going to be such a big event. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.